We're live.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here with us at Virada webinar. Today, we will have a pleasure to share this space here in Portugal with Christopher Lafayette. For those who doesn't know him, Christopher is an engaged emergent technologist in MedTech, virtual and augmented reality, AI, climate, and applied sciences, and recently created a mentorship program that inspires, educates, and brings underserved Black communities into technology in the US. I had the pleasure to meet Christopher last year at Stereopsia in Brussels, and I thank Alexander Gerard for that. And we had a great talk about community building and how we can build technology together with better solutions all around the world. So once again, thanks Christopher for being here with us, and please begin the show.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Inezia, for the introduction. And also thank you for the invitation to spend a little bit of time with you and everyone here today, especially by way of the association and everything that they're doing, and with the representation that we have going on in Portugal. It's just something that I think is just necessary in the space of XR, and hearing from places that you typically don't hear from when it comes to XR technology in particular. But to know that when you're dealing with XR technology, it's something that I always say, if we're going to extend reality, then we must bring reality with it. And that certainly is no less than the case when we have representation from different countries that we typically are not used to seeing building this type of technology when it comes to virtual and augmented and even mixed reality. And so we know that there's a lot that's happening in Portugal, and I myself am learning more by way of the opportunities that I have to meet with people that are in Portugal and the things that they're building and making. And I expect at some time we'll see some incredible platforms being developed natively from there. And so it's certainly a pleasure to be here and to spend some time with you all in these very powerful times. And so we find ourselves here in 2020 subject to different times. And as Inizio just mentioned, that we met at Stereopsia, and we knew each other before then, but we had the pleasure of spending time in Brussels, in congregated physical spaces, right? And now, no less than a year, we now find ourselves in virtual spaces and where we find ourselves congregating at. And the world has deemed what they consider virtual, these 2D precursors to 3D telepresence conversations and meetings that we have, and different sessions, presentations, keynotes, discussions, ideations. And as far as we've come along in technology, let's just say over the last 30 years, and then the leaps and bounds within even the last 10 years, whether you're dealing with cloud or whether you're dealing with the advent rise of 5G, so forth and so on, technology has become more greater than it's ever been on the face of this planet collectively. And as far as we've all come, and as great as our technology is, we now find ourselves in a situation where we realize that we haven't done enough. And for some time now, whether it's here in Silicon Valley, where I'm at, or in places across this particular country, the United States, or in other technology hubs around the world, there's been a certain monoculture that we've seen develop these types of technologies, and it's been very homogenized. And for one way or the other, it's been that case for some time. But now, as we move forward in the great build of technology, whether it's through artificial intelligence, whether it's through XR, we now realize that when it comes to a monoculture development cycle and build, that our products will only be so identifiable for so long, and that what we're building can only be as great as the people that build it and from the backgrounds from which they come from. And if technology is great now, imagine how much more better it can be if we begin to add other cultures to this great build of where we find ourselves today. And it's not for the sake of doing it as a feel-good initiative, but really for the sustainability and the scale growth of technology itself. It's incumbent for us to start building with a sense of a polycultural society, which takes us all the way back to ecoculture. And yes, we talk about diversity, and we should be more talking about ecobiotic diversity, which is speaking to the whole ecosystem. Because when we talk about ecosystems, what we tend to look at is an ecosystem is hardware and software and keyboards and screens, and that's not an ecosystem. Natively, an ecosystem are people. And the more homogenized that ecosystem is, actually is the weaker that ecosystem is when it comes to ecoculture. But the more culture that you have and the more diverse settings and native beginnings that you have introduced to that ecosystem by way of polyculture, the stronger that ecosystem becomes. Now, under the throes and under the banner of when it comes to product development, when it comes to accessibility, when it comes to inclusivity, when it comes to equity, now what we're doing is we're building products and we're hiring people that we want to buy our products. And now those products, when it comes to supply chain distribution, when it comes to identifiability, brand, product, now people from all different backgrounds can relate to this product that we want to distribute and that we want to sell and give, whether it's for enterprise or consumer. Now we're able to better identify that product and use it and have greater fidelity to it, because now we know we feel like it was built for us as well. And so when I go into a virtual space, and when it comes to something, let's say as simple as avatar development, and I go and ingress into this space and I realize that there's only two avatar choices for me, a blonde white male or a blonde white woman. And if I've been invited to speak at this event, as I've had the pleasure of speaking across the country, around the world, whether it's in person or virtually. Now, if I'm invited to speak in this particular setting, in this particular platform, I may feel by way just of the avatar that I know that I was invited to this space, but I don't necessarily know this space was built for someone that looks like me. And so when I natively look at a lot of the platforms of technology, whether it's an XR, AI, roboticism, IoT wearables, you name it, I start to see more and more people that do not look like me that are building these platforms. And we see a lot of failure that happens early in startups. We see a lot of missed opportunities. I see so many different companies and crews that could have greater adoption if they only expanded internally. First, their mindset and vulnerability and having an open mind towards having more people that don't come from where they come from as a whole and don't necessarily look like them, no matter the color, no matter the gender. And the more that we have more inclusivity of gender, the more that we have more inclusivity of color, then we can say technology is on the track to being greater. Especially in these times that we find ourselves in, where communication has no doubt been the greatest and significant advancement of technology in the last 10 years. There's nothing that's become more advanced in tech than communication. And now that we find ourselves in this COVID era, we're now using the tools that we've been steadfast and hard at building, and the adoption rate has become astronomical. When you take platforms such as Zoom that goes from 10 million users to 400 million daily users a day, that's a lot. And look, the disruption is continuing to happen. And there has definitely been negative effects of what we've been seeing by way of the current state of XR, if you will, when it comes to COVID-19 with supply chain disruption. Now, we're already limited on HMD availability globally. Now it's become even more impaired, right? And so when people look at the world of XR in terms of VR, which you have about 26 million, maybe 27 million deployed headsets globally, versus augmented reality, which we're at about 1 billion available devices for AR experience, that's definitely a dichotomy there. And so saying that to say, we'll continue to use communication more than we have beforehand, even if there was an official solution for COVID-19. Now that we've gone this far into virtual, don't expect those waters to recede. Expect it to become even more greater as we move forward, which makes for even more of a greater need for us to have more ecobiotic diversity, more ecoculture, to make sure that everyone feels like they have an opportunity to build, and that these products that ultimately that are rendered and that are sent to market are what everyone feels like they'll feel comfortable with. And I think that'll be greater for business, especially under the banner of communication, early stage adoption, and so forth and so on. And so, but when we look at the ecoculture environment, and one of the things that I looked at in particular, which began to happen here in the United States recently, although we found ourselves in a COVID-19 pandemic, we've also found ourselves in a second pandemic. And that's one in the nature of equality. And there's been a lot of impassioned hearts and minds here locally in the United States, when in particular it comes to the Black community, which I happen to be part of. And when we look at all the different types of ethnicities and different cultures I've had a chance to build here, what we've noticed in the United States is that the Black community has and is the furthest behind. Now, we're some of the biggest adopters of video games and gaming and different types of technology. We've been driving and leading cultural influence for decades. But by way of homogenization, by way of implicit and explicit bias and lack of opportunities, that's almost always seemingly been at our doorstep as a whole, we found ourselves, and we find ourselves today, way behind. And when I came to Silicon Valley with Black color skin, I looked around in whole cities and companies and neighborhoods and realized there's not too many people, almost at all, that look like me. And I would travel around the country and around Silicon Valley and speak, and around the world, I realized more and more in different rooms, there's just not a lot of people that look like me. And so when I look contemporary at our time to see what was happening here in this country, I had realized that what if I can take all the people all the brilliant minds that I've met in technology, the developers, the engineers, designers, leaders, thought leaders. What if I could take those minds, these women and men, and go back to places where I come from, like Oakland, California, here in Silicon, in the Bay Area, and take these hidden adults and get these hidden geniuses and bring them together into one environment virtually. And so we have these hidden heroes and these hidden geniuses, and bringing them together. If we're able to do that, what could happen? And I thought about it for some time, and I put it out there with an immense amount of vulnerability. I had no idea what would happen. I did not know what my peers would think, how they would feel about me creating what's now the Black Technology Mentorship Program, which is doing very well. Because more and more professionals are identifying the need and the express need for more culture internally in their platforms and in their programs and in their companies. And they realize that they have a better winnable opportunity, that when you bring more culture into your ecosystem, the whole ecosystem levels up. And everybody benefits. Nobody loses. No one's taking somebody's job away. We're creating more jobs, more opportunities, greater experiences. So how do I take these hidden geniuses and simply have our hidden heroes and provide an opportunity to help point somebody in the right direction, to help point somebody and say, hey, you know what? There was a time where I was at a fork in the road, and somebody came along and they simply pointed me in the right direction. How valuable is it for someone to simply point you in the right direction? Not asking for a handout, but an earned opportunity, and to help me go in the right direction. And so we found out that a lot of our members in our Black communities, educated, non-educated, adults, young adults, teens, children, K through 12, a lot of our mentees and students, they know about the technology, and some don't. They know they want to build a technology, but they don't know the way. And what may be considered finite in your and my understanding of technology, that we think that everybody knows, there are hundreds of thousands and millions of people that have no idea what we do as technologists. And I realized that to have someone come from this arena to simply tell somebody about what they do to this side is bridging a gap. And so under the voice of just one of our mentors talking for 1 hour to groups of now thousands of our mentees for 1 hour may not seem so significant to our mentors, but to our mentees, it's a game change. And so the program, which I'm going to share with you now, is the Black Technology Mentorship Program that I'm happy to present to you. And it's a mentor-mentee program that inspires, educates, develops, teaches, drives, informs, advises Black communities. for the betterment of technology itself. And we have a mission. And that mission is solely focused on career path and entrepreneurship. To let our mentees know that you can get a job at Google, you can get a job at Apple, you can get a job at Facebook, but we also have a track for you to create the next Google, the next Apple, the next Facebook. That you have a startup and that it really can get funded. That, hey, you've been using an iPhone or Android all your life, or hey, you like that new Oculus headset, guess what? You can actually build it. And we're going to help you get there. That's a great question. Compassion. Compassion is the first step. Without the compassion for helping others by way of servant leadership, without the great empathy that's needed to understand outside of our own perspective and lenses on what's happening to other communities around the country and around the world, this program does not exist. Without the desire to want to help and give people opportunities that many of us have been afforded and given, without that, this program doesn't happen. And so we provide an opportunity. We provide opportunities to those in the Black community to go in different ways, in different spaces that they've never been before, to see different things, to have an opportunity to understand what's prevalent coming down the pipeline, what technologies are relevant coming down the pipeline, whether it's Java or JavaScript or Python, Unreal, Unity, things of that nature. What they should be focused on and which way they should be headed. And so the commitment for our mentors is really simple. That's it. As little as 1 hour per year. We understand that a lot of people have a lot upon their shoulders, even now, more so than ever. And so what we didn't want to do, and what I didn't want to do, is build a program that was too heavy of a commitment, and for that to be an excuse as why not to join. So even if you had the desire, you wouldn't be held back and shackled by time constraints. Even with people's social distancing and sheltering in place and being at home, we've become more busy even sometimes at home than we have when we go into offices. We're adjusting into a different way of life. How could I possibly contribute as a mentor with all that's going on? But 1 year out of your time, one sacrifice of not watching Netflix to spend with a mentee could change a whole lifetime for them. So your 1 hour can affect their whole lifetime. Yeah, really. And yes, your role, you'll be a speaker, and you'll be part of our speaker class. That's one of the roles of 3. And our speakers will simply do just that. Talk about what they do, where they've been, where they want to go, what they build in technology, things they've built and been a part of, to hundreds, if not thousands, of mentees sitting on a Zoom, listening to every single thing that you say for that 1 hour. And for that 45 minutes, they get to explore, they get to journey with you, they get to go up the road with you, they get to hang over your shoulder, they get to find out more, and they get to develop a better sense of what they want to do. Now, for others, we have our educators. And our educators are teaching. They're doing small batch introductory sessions, but they're also doing long-term curriculum development. The small batch is introducing them into new worlds like Unity and like Unreal Engine. It's introducing them into a world of 3D spatial environments and spatial computing and volumetrics and all the things we like so much about XR. It's telling about things they've never heard before. And they may have seen, but they didn't never know what it was. Animation, code. And so we're bringing them into that world and showing them things that they've never been introduced to before by way of introductory sessions. And then we go the distance where we give them an environment in which they actually can learn how to do the things that we just introduced to them, whether it's become a 3D artist if they have the given talent to do it, or to be able to work and operate proficiently in Unity and Unreal. What if they want to contribute to machine learning and to data asset development? What if they want to work at deep neural networks and artificial intelligence? What if they want to build social distancing sweeps for COVID-19? What if they want to build robotic mechs and androids and things of that nature? We're creating platforms where they can actually, and a process where they're able to do that by way of education. And that begins in autumn. And we're really excited about our first wave of mentees and students that are already joining and signing up. And then lastly, we have our advisors. Because on the entrepreneur chat, going from lab to funding and lab to market is a difficult process. Owning a startup is emotional. Owning a startup is hard. So our advisors want to help guide our young pioneers and our adult pioneers and to navigate through the tides and the shifting nature of the ocean that they'll voyage across, called entrepreneurship, and give them the best tool suggestions and recommended resources available and possible so that they can go in better steps and better directions on how to become better entrepreneurial leaders, founders, product developers, and on what to do and what not to do. And so that their trek could be as successful as it can be, coming from where they come from, where for many, a lot of them have no idea where to begin to even begin starting a startup. And so we have people that are going to help point the way. We're really excited about our sponsorship and community sponsors that are forthcoming. We have a lot of them. And we haven't publicly introduced, but we will soon. And there's a lot coming down the pipeline. We're very excited about technology companies that identify this program as something that they need for their own platforms, and corporations that realize that there's a lot that they want to see happen when it comes to this platform. And for all you that are listening and that are watching right now, and have let me share a little bit of this time with you, I say thank you because you are appreciated. You're more appreciated than what you realize. And when you take the time to really consider where we've been in tech, where you've been, I would have you to submit how far you've come in your own personal journey. And have you to reconsider, how did you get to where you're at today? And at what point, who helped you? You know, when I was a kid, I would come home and there was a man sitting at a desk and he'd have a little light on and he'd be taking apart and putting together computers. And I asked this man and I would say, Dad, what's the internet? And he'd go about telling me that. And I say, Dad, how does the web work? And he'd tell me everything I wanted to know about how the web worked. And I didn't realize till years down the road just how effective that was for me in getting my first fundamental lessons in technology. And I realized that I had a parent in technology. And where neighborhoods and environments where I come from, they didn't have parents in technology. And a lot of the neighborhoods where I come from, they didn't even have a dad. So if you could consider the magnitude of having someone in your household that knows technology, that you see working at technology, that's significant. And when I came to Silicon Valley, though there weren't a lot of people that looked like me, there were still a lot of people that didn't look like me that helped teach me, that helped guided me, that became mentors and advisors. And I listened to people speak, and those that helped educate me. And I said to myself, if that worked for me, how much more could that work for others that come from places where I come from? To be taught by people that look like them and to be taught by people that do not look like them. And what does that say for our community in Portugal? How do we bring our communities in Portugal to teach people from neighborhoods in Silicon Valley? Places like Berkeley and Richmond, Oakland, places in George Floyd country and Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, in St. Paul, and places like that. Places in New York and in Boston and Baltimore, and areas like that, from Miami to Dallas, Seattle. How do we bridge these gaps? And yes, there's much more to do, and there's a lot of other organizations that are tackling these self-same narratives, whether it's from different communities, be it gender or different colors. But this community, this is the one that I've tapped into. It's directly affected me for some time. And I'm looking for more mentors. We have well over 100 mentors that have answered the call, and over 1,000 mentees that are coming and joining with us. We feel really good about a program that's less than 3 months old, that's done so much and has become so significant in this little amount of time. I had no idea that it was going to be this way, yet it's so anyhow. We're very excited to see what's coming down the pipeline and up the road for ourselves per this adventure and these very powerful times that we find ourselves in. And so I'll leave you with this at the moment before we may take a few questions. When you do take a look back at where you come from and how far you've come, and when you consider all the people and the helping hands that help lend to you and guide the way, take time to consider at one point, if you haven't already, because a lot of you have, but at what point do you give it back? It doesn't have to specifically be for the Black community, but at what point do you give back that which was given to you? I was always taught, give back freely give back that which was freely given unto you. And for me, it's all spiritual. I'm grateful for grace and mercy every day. I'm grateful for this opportunity to spend with you, to even be considered a technology leader. I'm grateful for these opportunities. I do not take them lightly. And I thank you for the time that you've given me today.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Christopher. This is an awesome program that you have. I'll take back a little bit about what you said. You said that in some point you were about a fork. You were in a fork, and then someone took and point a direction for you. I think that this is really, really important when you want to wonder what is a mentorship is. This is a very, very important thing that people shouldn't and might understand that this mentorship, this 1 hour mentorship that people are going to help the other ones, we might change a life of that entrepreneur, and not only the entrepreneur, that person itself, right? Because that 1 hour that you spend and not spend, that you change that person, might helping to build a new life, and not only a company, not only a startup, but helps to achieve something that that person wants to do in her life. What do you think? How is it working about the mentorship? Tell us a little bit about the mechanics. How people want, if people want to get mentorship, what should they do? What is the step by step to do it?
Sure, of course. And thank you for sharing that, Anicia. I really appreciate that. And I'm with you on that. Um, First of all, the platform is launched on ChristopherLafayette.com. So if you go there, and if you have a desire to become a mentee, a student, and you feel like there are things that you need to learn and be part of the community, then we have a forum for you to sign up there. If you want to be a mentor and you feel like there's things that I want to teach or that I can speak, educate, or even advise about, then we also have a forum there for you to sign up. And we have our mentor sessions that are happening, that have been happening this summer, every Wednesday. In fact, we have, a lot more coming up, whether we're talking about artificial intelligence or climate responsibility, and just areas of focus that we're going to be focused on when it comes to our mentee educational sessions and courses that we're offering and that we have that are free. It's all free. We don't charge anything to our mentees. We give them a free opportunity, and they're taking advantage of that. And so our advisory is free. Our educational platforms to our mentees are free. We are having our educators that are putting together programs and making sure that they're compensated for their time and taking the time to create long-term educational and developmental practices for our mentee student class. Right now, we start with our speaker series that begins in September, and then it heads into our educators platform that begins in October and leads on into 2021. And then that's our first wave of educator class that begins. And then our second educator class begins January 2021, which we're really excited for. We have our pre-filter practices that we're putting into place, that are in place for our mentees that are coming in now, and for our mentees that are continue to flow in. And so they'll have educational opportunities this year. And they'll also have educational opportunities beginning in 2021, which we're really excited for them about. Now, when it comes to us working with our company and corporate partners, the biggest part of what we call the last mile fulfillment is actually creating an opportunity through the last mile fulfillment for those that are on our career paths to get jobs, and for those that are in our entrepreneurial tracks to actually create funded platforms. And we do this by way of a pre-filter, incubator, and an accelerator program process that we call Shipyards, which we're really happy to introduce here in the future. But there's a process in which we want all of our mentee students to go in, whether it's classes, training, hackathons, platform development, lab to funding, and lab to market initiatives on the entrepreneur side, or it's on the career path is actually education, interview, enter into the actual company itself. And then we go through what we call our postmodern apprenticeship, which is actually being with our mentees still, even after they get a career and secure a career and a job. Because what we don't want them to do is just get a job and we leave them and say, that's it, so long, see ya. We want to make sure that they have an opportunity to have some type of helping hands while they're working at those companies as well. And we find that our company and corporate partners like that a lot for their platforms, and that we can work with our mentees by way of postmodern apprenticeship and continue to be with them every step of the way.
Great. We have a question here from Linov. They want to know, Linov is a startup here from Portugal, and they want to know, how can we hire without some cliche? How can we help to make it hire more people and without sounding cliche, and try to make it balance a little bit more?
That's a really great question. So a lot of companies that I've advised here in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, is a lot of that begins with how you look and what your brand looks like. When I go visit your platform, do I see any type of representation of people that look different from the people that started the company? Do I feel like there's an inclusive environment, an inclusive nature that's fortified in my brand? Those are some of the things we talk about when we talk about a visual invitation and visual comfortability, without necessarily having to go out there and say, we hire diverse, we hire diverse. I think the best way of saying that you hire diverse is to actually look diverse. And when you look diverse, that's going to attract and appeal people and say, hey, you know what, over there, I like what they're doing, but I don't think they want people that look like me, because when I go visit their platform, I don't see anyone that looks like me at all. But over there, I also like what they're doing. And when I go look at their platform, I see people that actually look like me. I think I'm going to go on over there and see if there's an opportunity that may present itself, because they have some jobs that are open, right? So a lot of it is not going out and saying, hey, we're looking for 15 Black engineers. That's one of the problems Silicon Valley has, is they do that. I'm looking for 60 Black engineers right now because I want to hire them. I guarantee if you fortify your brand to look the part of diversity, eco-biodiversity, and eco-culture, if you look like that, you will attract the talent. Now, when it comes to your hiring managers and people that hire, we know that a lot of talent is up against really tall walls of implicit and explicit biases. So I think a lot of these companies should have a good talk with their hiring managers and hiring management, so that they realize that they're not coming with a heavily biased lens. We know that bias exists, but not a heavy bias lens. And to realize that the more eco culture that you have, and that's one of the things I talk about with companies almost the most when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. I talk about it from an eco culture perspective, and teaching companies how to have better processes in place, so that you don't have to be specific towards gearing towards specific people that you want to bring in, but that you'll look the part, and it'll create a much more inclusive environment all the way around.
Great. Another question here. Hello, Chris. How can we surpass the fact that VR and AR hardware may be too expensive for most people in the neighborhoods? Because information is free, but hardware is not. Are libraries the future?
Give me that question again so that I can appreciate it. There's a lot with that. I felt like I heard two questions in there, Anicia. I need to hear that one again. You got to run that back for me again.
Okay, well, hello, Chris. How can we surpass the fact that VR and AR hardware may be too expensive for most people in the neighborhoods?
Sure. That question is a good question. And that's one of the things we talk about with accessibility. See, a lot, especially when it comes to VR, a lot of the hardware and a lot of the failure that's happened, even pre-COVID, is that it's too expensive. It's too high in cost. And the people that build it, they love the idea of what it can do. And they fall so in love with their idea that they think that people are willing to pay these astronomically high price points because they think that their product is so good, even on the enterprise side. On the enterprise side of the things, they think that these companies that are $1,000,000 and $1 billion valued companies are just going to lay down and buy hundreds of thousands of HMDs that cost $2,500, over $1,000 a piece. And they're just not, because why? One, they're not convinced that this new technology, or this emergent technology, excuse me, that this emergent technology is better than what they've been using traditionally. That's one. Two, right, Inicio? They're not convinced of that. Two, we haven't done a better job in actually educating what VR and AR actually is to justify those high price points.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. We're sitting here saying, hey, we have a VR headset, we have AR glasses for manufacturing AR, $2,000. Well, how do you justify that when you haven't even told people what it does and what are some of the best use cases? You tell people what it can do, but you haven't talked a lot about the case study. You haven't talked about the residual benefit of what's happened when it comes to other platforms. And so you're asking them to pay a significant high price point to become an early adopter of a thing that they don't know, and an untried and untested, barely tested methodology horizontally in all these different industries. And the prices are too high. Now, on the consumer level, it's the same thing. Now, Quest has done a good job when it comes to under a price point of $500, unless you consider tax. But for the most part, you can get a Quest for under $500. They did good with Go. On record, Quest is still my favorite headset. I have a few others, but I'm not talking about them right now. But Quest is still my favorite headset. What I don't like about Quest is the accessibility in terms of the distribution. How hard is it? How hard was it? And we can't blame COVID on it. Yes, it's harder to get a Quest now, but how much harder was it to get a Quest pre-COVID? And so what Quest said is that we're going to roll out to certain markets and get it to certain people. I think they should have made it much more broad, because I hear from people around the world all the time about how they want greater accessibility for hardware that actually is affordable. And so I think we have to ultimately do a better job of teaching and educating what these technologies are. And we have to have better connectivity with companies that are willing to have adoption programs to be willing to adopt your technology, because you have a lot of founders. One of the biggest obstacles for a founder to understand is not to fall in love with your own idea. You think the idea is great, you think what you're building is great, and then when you go to market, you fail, and you go hide your head somewhere. You don't want to be seen public anymore. You're embarrassed because your product that you spent so much time, energy, money, emotion in failed. Why did it fail? It's a good product, but why did it fail? Because you failed to empathize with the audiences that you want to sell to. Was there another part of that question, Anicia?
Yeah. And the second part is, are libraries the future? And I think that he means that in the libraries you can find headsets, public headsets for use. And do you think that those are the places where people will use to go to use headsets, HMDs, and equipment?
No, I don't. I think you're going to find that for certain communities. Yeah, sure. But no, because I think you're going to have location-based entertainment and location-based education. I know a lot of our industry talks about LBE and location-based entertainment. I get that, but that's so narrow to think that that's the entire future of VR. The future of VR is location-based education, LBE, not location-based entertainment. Yes, that's a big part of it, but entertainment will be siloed and brought home eventually. But educational platforms where you have group corporate training, individual telepresence communication stations, holodeck development that you can enter into, and that you can telepresence yourself into other environments, and you to them and them to you. That is the future. So it's not necessarily libraries, because when you think about the cleanliness, right, of cleaning up that environment and taking care of it, libraries aren't necessarily environments that are going to be doing that completely while they're dealing with other things. Now, I will say this, when it comes to libraries, I can eventually see us having libraries that are free from paper and free from books, where it's just whole walls full of HMDs that people go in there to. But to be able to do something of that size, your VR and AR experiences are only as good as the space in which you have to operate them in.
Don't you think that universities could help with those immersive labs that most of them, that at least few of them have, like creating public immersive labs to share and allow people to come and learn about it?
Yes, I think you're seeing that. I've advised some actually on the university level for the holodeck development and experimental. I think you're absolutely right, Anicio. There are more labs now, XR labs out there, and there's going to be even more at some point, I imagine, when it comes to telepresence, even by way of distance learning, that we're going to see experimental prototypical environments and constructs for XR use cases that are going to be developed. But I'll say this too, a lot of times we try to predict what's going to come down the future, and we do such a lousy job of it, in that we shouldn't do that. I don't really believe in many futurists at all that can so-called predict the future jot and tittle, with to be very specific, because all technology abides within an eco habitat. All emergent technology. You have AI, then you have machine learning and deep learning. You have XR, which is VR and AR. You have IoT, and you have wearables, and then you have roboticism. And you have all these different technologies that abide within the eco habitat. But what happens when these emergent technologies begin to grow and scale and come together? Now you have immersive fintech. Now you have immersive intelligence, AI and VR together. What happens when they come together? And it's called the merge pairing. And when these technologies come together, what the merge pairing really is doing is creating the fundamental constructs of the smart city. And so we don't know what the actual smart city completely is going to be and look like, because on a morphous scale, morphologically speaking, we don't know how the merge pairing will ensue. 6 months ago, Uber was highly relevant. How relevant is Uber today?
Airbnb, for example, the same thing.
How high relevant is Airbnb today, Anicio? Technology is usually what disrupts technology, but never have we seen, contemporary to our time, a pandemic disrupt technology. It makes you consider.
Yeah. Another question that we have here from João Christopher. In your opinion, what is the best way of finding a mentor?
That is a great question. That is such a great question. It's hard. That's your answer. To find a mentor, to find the right type of mentor, when you go about trying to find a mentor as a mentee, you don't necessarily know who or what to look for. And now that a lot of social spaces are no longer open as they used to be, it's become even harder, because you may hear someone on stage. I would hear people on stage speak in different groups when I was living out of a hacker space called Hacker Dojo in Mountain View. And I would hear people speak, and I would go speak with them and say, hey, I really like what you had to say. Can I ask you some things? And they would spend some time with me. And some of those people to this day are very strong mentors to me to this day. Yeah, I have mentors, and they teach me a lot, and a lot of them have been in technology. Some have been in technology decades before I've even been in tech. And there's a lot that I know that they don't know. And it's different because I've become more of an expert in certain regards than what they are in. But they'll always know more about technology, if you will, as a whole, because of their collective experience. And they're more fundamentally sound in their understanding of tech. And there's a lot that I get from them just by sitting and speaking and doing a lot of listening with them and having conversations. And they're still instrumental to me to this day. And so, and I'll go back to them from time to time and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, or I'm looking at this when it comes to this type of technology build, and they're available. So I will say, instead of, so there's the question of how to find one, but it more comes to the question of why. And what do you want from a mentor? What are you looking for in a mentor? And then I think once you have, and then what is it that you want to do? What does your end game look like? And I think once you get that understood, I don't think you'll have that difficult of a time finding the right type of mentor if they have the willingness to be there. But when you do find a mentor, remember to listen more than you talk. Even to this day, as much as I talk and talk and talk, a lot of times when I get around my mentors, I listen.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Sometimes we have to take into consideration that those entrepreneurs, they don't know, as you said, what they need, because
Right.
they might need a lot of things at the same time, but they have to choose the most important gap that they have and try to find someone who can help them with that gap, that bigger one
Yes.
at least, right?
Yes, of course. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So, coming back to the mentorship program, this is going to be a lifetime program. Does it end? Does it have phases for now? What are your plans? What do you plan? I know that there is a couple sessions going right now. You said that you had already 1,000 people subscribed as mentees, and that's awesome. But what are the next steps?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll head into our educator class. And then from there, we'll go about getting people jobs at funded startups. Those are next steps, and we'll see how that does. And this program, in part, will only be as strong as the companies that want to work with us, and corporations, and our community partners, and our community sponsors, and our corporate sponsors. And so we'll see how far that can go. Um, It's of my hope that this goes the distance. And I think you asked a really good question, Inicio. I don't want this to be a lifetime program for decades, because wouldn't it be great if we never had to have programs like these in the first place? So the idea is to build a program like this so that we can end programs like these.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. We don't have more questions over here. Do you feel like saying something else to wrap up this? I think that was an awesome. This program is awesome. I just applied for be a mentor, and I'm searching for people who might fit to be a mentee to help them to subscribe it to. Do you feel like saying anything else that you wanna?
You know, my friends in Portugal who I know and who I don't know, a lot of people in Europe who I know, and obviously the majority of people I don't know. I ask that you join us on this journey, this adventure of becoming a mentor. I promise you it'll be rewarding. There's a lot of opportunities that come from this. And more importantly, what will happen is it not just for our mentees to learn from you, but you will learn from them. And I guarantee that this will make you stronger. Thank you for being so inviting, Portugal. Thank you for the opportunity, Anicio. Thank you for the invite. Louis, I know that you're out there. I hope that you're well also. I really hope that everyone takes good care and that's well. I'm really grateful. I'm really just spiritually grateful for these opportunities to be able to spend time with you in these particular times. And I certainly hope the best for all of you in the future forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Just to remember, to apply to be a mentor or MNT, just go to christopherlafayette.com. We will, after the video, we'll put the comments and description with all the information to access Christopher Lafayette informations. Please, thank you again, man, for being here with us. This is a very, very important thing to do. We need to evangelize to make those technologies go further, but not only thinking about the technology, thinking about people who can use, who can develop, who can learn, who can share, and who can build their own lives using VR and AR. And this is awesome what you're doing. Congratulations for that.
Thank you, Anicia.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for being with us. This was another webinar from Vidala, Portugal, and I hope to see you in September when we will have our next webinar. Okay, see you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.